There is more to today's tale than just a car manufacturer. It concerns Chevrolet, a nameplate woven into the fabric of America. Every man's badge is looking for driveways from California to Michigan. But Chevy's American dream is stalled due to tariffs, broken supply chains, and fierce international competition. Communities are being emptied away, factories have gone dark, and GM is changing its strategy from volume to profit, putting all of my money on trucks, SUVs, and local survival. Every development has changed Chevrolet's destiny, from China's ascent to Trump's policy. Hold on tight. The factors that drove Chevy out of its native territory are being dismantled. The silence of Chevrolet's assembly lines, factories, families, and futures. The Chevrolet. The assembly lines of Chevrolet keep quiet. Families, factories, and futures. The quiet of factory floors, not boardroom memos, was the catalyst for Chevrolet's downfall. A chapter of Midwest pride and middle-class mobility came to an end as the Lordstown plant produced its last Cruze. The heritage of Detroit, Hamtramck, and Warren Assembly, once associated with Chevrolet's sedan, went dark shortly after, leaving behind deserted villages that were busy before the sun rose. The impact was felt by local teams backed by Chevy employees and schools that received union salary. Chevy was America's everyday brand for many years. The family-friendly Impala, the Volt to the first EV pioneers, the Cruze for effectiveness. Not all of their retirements were due to changes in products. They were a sign of GM's global attempt to break with tradition. Even the workhorse of the Silverado Chevy relied on parts imported from Mexico, Canada, and other countries. It was dubbed optimization by executives. Employees referred to it as layoffs. The gaps were only widened by tariffs, which revealed how brittle Chevy's American identity had become, formerly a representation of tenacity. Today, Chevrolet's facilities serve as glaring reminders of policies and their unexpected repercussions. Additionally, while closed factories demonstrated the human cost, policy itself dealt the next blow. Chevrolet was subject to tariffs that were more severe than anticipated. Chevrolet is heavily impacted by tariffs. Costs increase and loyalty is tested. Chevrolet is heavily impacted by tariffs. Costs increase and loyalty is tested. American icons like Chevrolet were marketed as being protected by tariffs. However, Trump's 25% auto and part duties hurt the brand more than they benefited, cutting GM's revenue by a startling 32%, or $1. $1 billion in a single quarter. Chevy suffered the most because of its globally sourced lineup. While Canadian-built Equinox and Traverse models became liabilities, the Korean Trailblazer had to pay nearly $6,000 in tariff expenses. To protect consumers, GM maintained sticker costs at zero. However, the sacrifice cost billions of dollars and caused GM's stock to drop 7% in a single day. Silverados, even those produced in the USA, were not exempt. They stacked tariff bills and crossed borders with their electronics and brake systems. Customers became cautious. Chevy price hikes were warned of in the headlines. In order to move cars, dealers relied on incentives while families hesitated. Ironically, Chevrolet became less competitive as a result of initiatives intended to preserve its American identity. But there were other storms besides tariffs. Soon after, Chevy's global supply chain failed, making production lines susceptible to interruptions. Prior to going forward, we would appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button. This enables us to connect with more car enthusiasts like you. 3. Supply chain. Disintegration. Chevrolet faces pressure from tariffs. Supply chain disruption. Chevrolet faces pressure from tariffs. Chevrolet's worldwide reach until tariffs turned its strength into a liability. Before arriving in American showrooms, a Traverse combined Korean electronics, Mexican interiors, and Canadian stampings. However, the Silao facility in Mexico, where Silverados are constructed, now has delays and additional expenses due to each border crossing. When costs increased, workers wanted rises, but GM used tariffs to keep wages low in Canada. While Tennessee's Spring Hill saw frequent shutdowns on EVE crossovers, the Chevy line halted. Even the Bolt EV, which was touted as Chevy's future, was hampered by delays caused by tariffs and shortages. Tier 1 was difficult for the suppliers. While smaller Tier 2s failed due to volatility, firms absorbed steel surcharges, resulting in bottlenecks that cost GM millions every day and idled thousands of Chevrolets. Employees became irritated on both sides of the border. Mexican line technicians are stuck with poor pay. Members of the UAW observe shifts disappear. If the purpose of tariffs was to save jobs, they asked the same question. What caused Chevrolet communities to bear the heaviest costs? Are supply chains overburdened? GM changed course and rebuilt Chevrolet's future on profit rather than volume as a survival tactic. 4. Chevrolet bets on trucks and SUVs, profit over volume. Chevrolet bets on trucks and SUVs for profit over volume. Chevrolet was at the heart of GM's survival strategy, but doing so required reimagining the brand. Profit over volume is the new motto of CEO Mary Barra, who prioritized Chevy's most profitable models even if it meant making other cuts. Chevrolet's best-selling vehicles, the Silverado and full-size SUVs like the Tahoe and Suburban, were the first targets of the counterattack. These profit-making machines could continue to generate high margins even in the face of tariffs. With plans to bring the Blazer and Equinox assembly back to the United States by 2027, GM pledged $4 billion to increase U.S. capacity and increased manufacturing in Indiana and Texas. The compromises were difficult. Because sedans like the Cruze and Impala were no longer available, entry-level EV purchasers' affordability was constrained. The Equinox EV rollout stalled and the Bolt was delayed. From audacious aspirations to cautious realism. Partnerships also evolved. When Honda's Acura EV scheme failed, Chevy was able to free up resources. However, Chevrolet ran the risk of lagging behind competitors in terms of innovation by relying so heavily on trucks and SUVs. However, geographic location is more important for survival in the modern auto industry than financial gain. Area by area, Chevy will have to fight for its future. A regional future, rivals advance, Chevrolet protects home. A regional future, rivals advance, Chevrolet protects home. Regional conflicts will determine Chevrolet's future rather than a global one. One-size-fits-all automobiles are a thing of the past. Trade disputes and tariffs forced GM to produce locally. Chevy was created for Chinese consumers in China, for Americans in America, and for rising markets in Latin America. This change has both potential and risks. Chevy's Made in USA brand is strengthened by moving the Equinox and Blazer manufacture back to American factories, one of the dealer's selling points. Global shrinkage, however, puts one at danger of losing territory as competitors grow. At home, Ford's F-Series is dominant. Fine-tunes of Stellantis, Jeep imports. China floods developing countries with low-cost EVs, while Hyundai invests in U.S. battery hubs. Chevy once disputed it. The lineup is reshaped by regionalization. In America, the Suburban and Silverado continue to serve as fortress models. Policy increases volatility even as EVs must be properly timed to prevent oversupply. Tariffs can quickly increase a racing margin or give Chevy a boost overnight. This leads us to the crucial query. Conclusion. The road. Conclusion. Will Chevrolet be able to weather America's auto storm? Will Chevrolet be able to weather America's auto storm? The U.S. downfall of Chevrolet. S represents the misfortune of multiple brands. It's a political, economic, and globalization cautionary tale. Damaged supply lines, billions of dollars, and formerly prosperous Chevy communities were left floundering as a result of colliding tariffs intended to safeguard. GM's transformation: make more money than volume. Prioritizing regional reach over global reach seems less like a daring comeback and more like survival mode. Chevy's flagship models, such as the Silverado, Tahoe, and Suburban, as well as the billions committed to American manufacturing, offer promise. However, competitors like Tesla, Hyundai,